that is a discussion we'll be conducting this morning, because according to the opposition to urban tolling, a lines out at the end of February 2015 meant that e-toll revenue collection was sitting at about 60 million rand, with not even 23% of users paying for the use of the freeways. So to try and address this, and also supposedly address the public's concern regarding the controversial e-tolling system, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, as you've seen in Parliament, announced new proposals to withhold vehicle licenses until outstanding e-toll bills are paid. So many have opposed this decision, calling it absolutely unlawful. And this morning we are gathered here to debate and share various views on the new regulations. And to help us do just that, we've got a huge panel that is joining us this morning, as well as numerous of our guests that are joining us. Let's start off with our panelists, which are joining me this morning. Starting off with Simona, who is the Sunrail spokesperson. Wayne Duvenage is from Outer, he's the Outer chairperson. Diane Rikotso from the Department of Transport, as well as Howard Wovsky, who is from the Justice Project, joining us as our guest this morning. Of course, we've got an array of our guests as well that Penny will be touching on, will be joining us and deliberating on the conversation. And as always, we do invite you at home to be an active participant this morning. Remember, we are available on Facebook as well as Twitter. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Yeah,
well, perhaps we should start off with you. I mean, we were kicking off the whole notion of e-tolls. I mean, everybody, and in fact, it was Nazir who said that everybody's on this hype about e-tolls. Is it the case that South Africans perhaps don't necessarily understand the benefits of using a road that is world class, of making sure that you are safe on the road, and therefore we create this hype opposing the very same system that is trying to help us as motorists?
Well, more than just the benefits, I think there is a misunderstanding of the concept e-tolling.
Yeah.
E-tolling simply means an electronic method of payment. Now, that is equivalent to, say, e-banking or e-government. I have yet to hear people saying we are anti-e-banking, we want to transact manually. We prefer to do it, to go and fill in a slip and so on. So e-tolling is simply an electronic method of payment. I would understand if people are saying we are anti-tolling. That's different from saying we are anti-e-tolling. So we need to clarify these two. And I think,
so we've been using the wrong terminology, is that what you're saying?
Look, there are people like my friend Wayne who've been saying we are against urban tolling. I think that comes close to actually identifying the real issue. But to say we are anti-e-tolling, it's an electronic method of payment. The alternative is to do it manually. And on a busy highway between Johannesburg and Pretoria, you can't do manual tolling. You're going to create total chaos on the highways. But yes, let's get to the benefits. There are benefits that have been brought about by tolling. We have seen the traffic decongesting. If you go back to 2005, 2007, around Allen Day, it was an absolute gridlock. And after what we did, we have seen traffic decongesting.
On that notion of traffic decongesting, Wayne, is it that motorists are finding alternative methods of getting home, that the traffic is decongesting, or is it the case that, in fact, the benefits of e-tolling is not necessarily being communicated to the general public, hence why we find figures, for example, that say that 74 or 75% of Gauteng motorists are completely against this and don't necessarily want to use the e-tolling system?
Yeah, look, I think we must give clarity to the issue. This is not about e-tolling, this is about tolling of urban roads. They're using the electronic methodology. Of course you'd have to do that. As Rizzi says, you can't go through a manual process. So the question is, do you subject social infrastructure? These are roads that you and I take to work today, to earn a salary, to pay taxes. Do you subject that through to an efficient, very inefficient, cumbersome and costly revenue collection mechanism to pay for it or not? And that's the issue. Building roads is another issue. E-tolling hasn't brought us the decongestion. The building of the roads brought us the decongestion. And that's what government's role is to keep pace with a growing society, a growing economy. You widen the roads and you put in place world-class public infrastructure, public transport infrastructure to deal with the decongestion as well. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we are captive to the roads. Our public transport infrastructure is diabolical. It's dismal. I can't take 2 buses on reliable public transport to get to and from work and back again. It's just virtually non-existent. 84% of our public get to work and back or commute on our roads, not through public transport, of which half of that is the taxi industry, which somehow the department seems to put them into the category of public transport, and that's a whole nother debate. So the problem that we have here is that you have induced congestion. every 4 or 5 years. These roads are just as congested now as they were when they started the construction, or prior to the construction. So now what are they going to do? We're going to build another road and double that tolling because we're still paying off the last toll bill. I mean, it's becoming quite a nightmare.
And Dan, on that notion of construction, I mean, we've been hearing this for quite some time, especially when the proposal of the tolling or urban tolling was introduced, saying that the actual construction of the debt to SANRAL was about 20 billion rand. Now you've got various institutions, whether it is OUTA or some of the opposition, saying that by the end of March, for example, 2015, the bill was sitting at about 44 billion rand, and saying that that is up from the initial cost of 20 billion rand, and obviously looking at the figures that were happening in March of 2014. So in that regard, does that mean that South Africans will just never stop paying for urban tolling or for using the roads?
Not at all. The reality is that if you go out and seek a loan to embark on an infrastructure project of this magnitude, you're going to attract certain administrative costs. You're going to attract interest. More so when you find yourself defaulting, because the reality is that at the time at which SANRAL was meant to start collecting revenue, it wasn't able to do so simply because of the challenges that we encountered, the court processes, various court processes that we had to be part of. So therefore it means that there's going to be an escalation in that which was initially going to be the repayment amount on the part of SANRAL. So it's quite unfortunate that we find ourselves in this situation, especially for a critical institution like SANRAL, because you know that out of all the work that SANRAL does, only about 16 or 17% of its business is tolling. The rest of it is funded by the fiscals. The roads that SANRAL builds for the people of South Africa, talking about your N1, N2, N3, N4, roads that we've been using successfully so, which have proven to be quite efficient. So therefore, it is important to ensure that we save the institution called SANRAL. It's important, therefore, that we do everything in our power to ensure that SANRAL continues to do that which South Africans have been enjoying since 1998 when SANRAL was set up.
Okay, we're going to be continuing this conversation regarding urban tolling, or even the tolling of our roads, infrastructure, the oppositions that has been coming through as a result of these.
Feasible for the residents of Gauteng, who some are earning plus minus 7,000 rands a month, to be able to afford the bills that come with Etolls. Well, the economics know the number. Chris Hart, thanks for joining us this morning. Do you think this is feasible for the residents of Gauteng, looking at the pressures that we're facing as a country currently?
No, there's two problems. The first is the cost of the actual system. You put in 100 rands worth of roads, you've got to extract 100 rands to pay for it. But when you actually use a system that needs 140 rand to pay for the road, you've got 40 rand of wasted value that's extracting money that's hard earned, and that you're also imposing a cost on Gauteng residents that are not imposed on other provinces. The second thing is tolling in general has damaged our road infrastructure that is not tolled, because you've got a solution for one road, but you don't have the solutions for the untolled roads. And we can see this in the country across the board.
All right, I'm seeing the Business Commerce agreeing there strongly as well. You're nodding your head, or are you in disagreement? Are you from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry?
Yes, thanks very much. I'm from South African Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
In terms of, like, you're agreeing with what Chris is saying, will this be good for our economy that is not growing at the rate that we'd like to see it growing?
It's got quite a big dent, especially on the small medium enterprises who are relying on efficiencies in order to generate their revenue. The whole process of e-tolling, it digs deep into the margins, and it's creating a problem. However, from a SAC perspective, we are of the view that the fuel levy is a better option than the option that is currently on the cards.
Well, they're saying that's a conversation that they're not willing to have, and the workers are up in arms, and they're saying they're going to chop this down.
This debate should be premised on as to whether e-tolling is it privatization of public goods or not. It's not about urban tolling, it's not about e-bank or e-government or e-tolling. It's about as to whether these roads were they not free roads before. Secondly, COSATU National Congress argued that we need efficient, affordable, and accessible public road system. And majority of workers are using their own vehicles not as a luxury, on the basis that public transport system can access their workplaces. And as COSATU emanating from the special CEC, the special CEC has characterized Etolls as a bitter pill but sugar-coated. We rejecting the new dispensation as Deputy President, and we say how train is subsidized by government, but public transport is not subsidized by government. So therefore, COSATU will continue its campaign to reject Etolls. We'll be going back to the streets and do what we've been doing. And we have assembled more resources in order to reject this system, as we believe it is privatization of public goods.
Is it privatization of public services? Of course, according to COSATU, it is. That's Chris talking to us there from COSATU. Well, Faith, that's your guest.
Yes, I can see that various of our panelists, they are eager to respond to some of the questions and the comments that have been posted. And starting off with you, we're looking at the proposals here, saying that it's the privatization of public goods. How do you respond to that?
You see, ideally, if we had an opportunity to wait forever, for a century, to bring to the people of South Africa that which they cannot have as a result of fiscal constraints, we will do that. But as a responsible government, we're not going to do that. We know exactly what was the situation between Pretoria and Johannesburg in the main, so far as the old Schoeman Highway is concerned. The increase of lanes from 2 or 3 to 5 and 6 in some instances has indeed led to the free flow of traffic, meaning that less travel times. Well, the question of decongestion can be debated as to whether it has taken place or not. So therefore, as a responsible government, we have to look at other means through which we ensure that the people of South Africa enjoy that which they would have had to wait forever if we were to only rely on the fiscal allocation that comes from Treasury, which is not enough, simply because we have competing interests as government that we need to fund. The issue of public transport, look, we do acknowledge that if we are to get public transport to where it's supposed to be, we'll be able to resolve a number of challenges so far as the transport space is concerned. Yes, we are trying. We have recently introduced the bus rapid transit system, of course. Those who are using it can basically give testimony that it is working. We hope to roll it out to all municipalities. It's running in the city of Johannesburg, it's running in the city of Tshwane. Many other cities are busy working on that. City of Cape Town as well, working very efficiently. So we want to have that replicated throughout the country, because we'll be beginning to address to be addressing the issue of public transport, which will basically address many other issues, including affordability, which was mentioned by COSATU. But I want to differ with Mr. Mampane. Public transport is subsidized. Buses are public transport. Government spends at least 5 billion rands annually to subsidize bus operations. Metro Rail is a government service which is subsidized. At least 60% of people, in particular in a place like the Western Cape, rely on trains to move from work to home and various destinations where they have to engage in economic activity. So it cannot therefore be true that public transport is not subsidized. Yes, taxi industry, not as yet, but we're engaging with them to basically get to a point where we could basically make it easier for them to provide the kind of service that they need to.
And on that note, I actually want to cross over to Penny, because there are various guests of ours that are either shaking their head or agreeing with you in the various statements that you've made thus far. So Penny, it's over to you.
All right, thanks, Faith. Chris, you're shaking. You heard during Diana's commentary there. What is it that you're disagreeing with specifically?
Well, it's the payment mechanism. The government extracts an enormous amount out of the fuel levy and only allocates, I think, about half of that back to roads and road maintenance. And it's the mechanism of payment. We're suggesting a fuel levy, and that's the most obvious, and there's one thing that's the definite thing we're not considering, and it's irrational. We don't have to wait 100 years. We can use the fuel levy and actually use the fuel levy to sort out all our roads. It doesn't have to be this one, and we need to extract the right, and it's extraction, the right amount to actually sort out our roads. Instead of these piecemeal
okay, Clive, you're also an economist. Are you in agreement with what Chris is saying?
I totally agree. I think the worst person hit here is the poor. And in actual fact, if you think about urbanization and the fact that, well, nearly half of people at work travel towards Johannesburg and use these roads on a daily basis, and if I'm doing, well, average as an individual. I have my car. We've already been taken from a fuel levies perspective, and then on top of that, the inflation currently South Africa is sitting about 5.1%. That's also a pain that I have to pay out. And not only that, you start thinking about the other layers of fees that have been extracted from the consumer. Unfortunately, we grew 1.4% GDP just last year. And now you're putting more costs onto the consumer. It's going to be very hard to get to that level where you are able to grow at a percentage that will actually create more jobs for the country.
Well, are we not being able to calculate properly, or the numbers are just totally not adding up, especially when it comes to how it's hitting the consumer? We come back and tackle some of that, especially from the opposition parties who are sitting amongst us right here. We continue Sunrise after this break.
This perspective. I mean, we've been hearing the Department of Transport say that they're a responsible government, but also been hearing about the poor being affected in this regard, and also some of the new proposals within the dispensation saying that perhaps it is unconstitutional, especially when it comes to withholding of licenses, vehicle licenses in that regard. Tell us about that one.
Well, look, it's actually quite interesting that Sanral government has gone to so much trouble to print this booklet, but it's gone to no trouble to publish a government gazette actually detailing this new constipation. The fact is that we have a bit of a problem here, and that problem is that this must have taken a bit of time to typeset, etc., but yet we couldn't talk about the practicalities of bringing about these changes. Now, firstly, when one starts talking about withholding your license disc if you've got outstanding Etolls, what you are in fact saying is, firstly, that license discs serve no purpose other than to generate tax money, but we're not going to tell you what we do with that tax money from your license discs. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your license fees are taxes that get swallowed up and are not ring-fenced. That's the first thing. Okay, so we can talk about the fuel levy all we want, etc., and we can also talk about having things now that we don't want to wait for, just like the person, or I would say a large proportion of our society who have credit cards, which of course is the cheapest way to buy furniture, etc., and it's the most efficient, and that's why so many people are under debt review. The fact is that I don't understand these big economics, but I do understand that paying huge interest to people and huge contracting fees to people, etc., may not be the most efficient way of doing things. When we start talking about withholding license discs on the basis that you have not paid another tax, which is now also being, funnily enough, acknowledged by Sanral and the Department of Transport, who previously said no, the GFIP e-tolls are not a tax. They're a service charge. What do these tolls have to do with your vehicle's roadworthiness and licensing?
Actually, on that note, what do they have to do with the vehicle's roadworthiness as well as your licenses? I think I'm going to pose it to you, Sanral, as well as to you. Let's start off with you, Vusi.
Well, the proposal to withhold the license disc, and I must make a distinction, the renewal will happen, Howard. So in the system...
I understand that you're going to take my money, but you're not going to give me what I paid for.
Give me time.
Okay.
Right? This came about as a result of society being unhappy about Sanral criminalizing people for not paying. And the shareholder said, let's look for an alternative. A disincentive that will not criminalize people. And after
on that note, when you're smiling up because you just heard the word criminalizing, are you admitting the fact that indeed in the initial instance it was a criminal sort of proposition?
No,
Yes, it was. Because it is in the Act.
Wayne?
It is in the Act.
Wayne?
Under the Act of 1998.
Let's give Wayne an opportunity to answer that
They
question.
failed completely.
Yeah.
They knew that they couldn't criminalise people. We said, come, let's do this then. If you're going to threaten us, and Vusi Mona and the guys this time last year were saying, if you do not go and pay your bills, we are going to summons you, you're going to get a criminal record. Can you imagine trying to get a job with a criminal record? All these things to coerce and force people to rush off. And all they got was a 45% compliance for a user-based system. Massive fail.
Yeah.
So with that massive stick, of saying we're going to arrest you and criminalize you, it didn't work. So they had to go back to the drawing board and try another stick. So they brought out a new one and they cancelled and scrapped this absolute fiasco, this farcical issue that they were going to criminalize us. If you want to criminalize us, Vizi, do it. We're ready to go to court. Take us to court. We refuse to take a decision not to do that. But why did you do that?
All right, let's take a time out on this end. And Penny, I think that
Why did you say so in the first place?
gentlemen, let's take a time out on this end and let's give our others an opportunity to actually answer. Penny, I think it's order.
Parliament. Stop talking like this. Quieten down.
In the studio this morning.
We need a timeout.
You have a bill of how much?
I don't have a bill of that much. This is this gentleman here of 150,000. My name is Sean from Bikers Against Tolls. Vusi is 100% correct. Sandrail is an act. It's an act. You're trying to use the license system to beat the public, to force them to pay. There is defiance. We're not going to pay. Why does a motorcyclist pay the same rate as a 4x4 towing a caravan? Please explain that to us. Our footprint on those roads is so small. We have 360,000 bikes in Johannesburg. I will put them on those highways and stop these highways for a day if I have to. You have not listened to the public.
How is that coming?
All right. So how is the new dispensation going to help someone like yourself who's got a bill that's already over 150,000 rands?
150 grand, there it is there.
Yeah.
I'm not paying it. We refuse to pay. I'd like to know from the Department of Transport. My buses, I pay 37,000 rand a year license fees. How's that subsidized?
Wow. Okay. Some more political parties comments. Okay, let's hear from the Freedom Front Plus.
Yes, I'm Anton Albrecht. Well, we've had a free road, and now suddenly it becomes a pay-for road. So it has been privatized. But government spends or loses 60 billion rand per annum due to maladministration, corruption, and so on. If they fix those holes in the pipeline, we can pay off the debt once off, finish and clear. But they're not interested. There's no political will because there's Nkandlas and whatever. But we have to pay for a road that existed before and was free. And we have 1 lane, 2 lanes extra, and not actually well built at all.
Yeah. Is there no political will? That is the question. Okay, so the DNN will wrap it up with the EFF over there.
I definitely have to agree with my colleagues. Fact is that they are taking the public for a ride. Withholding of discs is another way of criminalizing the non-payment of Etolls, because your Metro police officers are definitely going to fine you. And that is a stick. Quite frankly, Sandrail and this responsible government is creating a society of defiance, a society that has had enough and are going to be pushing back. And that is the last thing you want, is a society that says no to the rule of law.
Well, no to the rule of law. Is it maybe a bit too late? We've crossed over already, haven't we, EFF?
Well, you know, most of the points I think have been made. One is the privatization point. This is just a form of privatization, and it is wrong for that reason. Why? Because when you privatize a public good, what you are doing is you are, let's say the road amount is 100 rand. Now you have to pay 120 rand because some Austrian company has to make a profit from this. So it's a double whammy. Not only is it privatization, but it's to benefit a foreign company. Secondly, it's meant to punish the poor. I mean, the Tiani tells us no, the taxes are exempted. That is a mirage, because what you do is the business people who are not exempted are going to take that money, the cost is going to be carried through to the consumer. So the poor are going to suffer anyway. And then thirdly, this it's laughable, this notion that criminalization has been removed, because as has been pointed out, it is now indirect criminalization. When you don't pay your fine, you're still going to be criminalized. So what they're saying is that we're not going to criminalize through Sandrail, but through.
This morning we continue that conversation, and I'm going to ask you, Vusi, we heard that one of our guests has got a bill of about 150,000 rand. How did you get to 150,000 rand?
Well, I didn't have the specifics, but he can come to us and we look at the bill, and if he wants to dispute it, and
But doesn't that
Let
mean
me
that the
dispute it.
entire system in itself now is completely flawed?
It is
We
possible.
cannot generalize.
Yeah.
Yes, we've acknowledged. If you go into some of the statements that have made in the past year, so Minister of Transport made an acknowledgement that yes, there have been teething challenges in the beginning, but not to say that the system is a complete failure, because there are people who have received accurate bills. What about them? Are we saying that they do not exist? We're going to wish them away? No, we can't. So yes, we have experienced those challenges in the beginning. We have read the Riot Act to SANRA to speak to its operator to say that, look, we do understand that with a project of this magnitude, you do run into challenges, but not in this fashion. And they've gone out of their way to actually address some of those issues that we've raised with them within a short space of time. Yes, we do acknowledge that there may be those who are, for instance, still experiencing those challenges, and hence we invite them to come to SANRA, because it wouldn't help to write a letter to the editor and then complain about something that you can easily have addressed by SANRA.
Yeah, Howard, Howard, I'm going to come to you, but Wayne, you look like you're about to fall off your chair now. Tell us, what's going on now?
Look, this is completely continuous farce. When the authorities come to us and say, now we've listened, so we've changed the dispensers, we've changed, not going to hit you with this stick, we've got another stick.
Yeah.
They try to project this image and view that they're listening to the people. But if they'd have listened to the people long ago, we said to them, seriously, you're going to criminalise? Yes, we're going to. Oh, it's not going to work. So now we put it and couch it as we're listening to the people. The people, if they do listen to them, in all the submissions made to the panel, in all the submissions made to 95%, let me not say all, because there were a couple of engineers and people who support Etolls, but really a minor amount. Look at the polls that are done through Ipsos and the marketing research companies. Look at the submissions made to the GFIP steering committee, all of them. If you listen seriously, you will find that Etolls is so irrational and so out of touch with reality. The people have spoken, but they say they've listened. They haven't listened.
On that notion that the people have spoken, 74%, Ipsos actually revealed that 74% of Gauteng motorists are saying that they need to find an alternative ways to the actual e-tolling system. In that regard, if that is not being listened to, are the people of South Africa being listened to, and what needs to be done in your opinion, Howard?
Well, of course the people of South Africa are being listened to by our very, very patriarchal government who's saying, you'll do as we say. Okay, we've listened to you, now shut up and do as we say. So this is in fact what has happened. And just on the score,
I'll give you an opportunity to disagree.
On the score of decriminalising things, let us just bear in mind that prior to the introduction of Etolls, when the likes of Vusi were threatening people with criminal records, etc., etc., Justice Project South Africa sent a letter to SANRAL and the Minister of Transport pointing out that you can't prosecute people in the jurisdictions of the Joburg and Tshwane Metro Police Departments under the Criminal Procedure Act. You had to use the ARTA Act. What has been acknowledged now by the Minister, saying we're going to use the ARTA Act, okay, is, hey, you guys were right, but we're not prepared to say so. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the second that you stray out of those jurisdictions, you now go into the jurisdiction of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, which has a stated policy of following sections 57 and 57A of the Criminal Procedure Act, which holds that a person who pays an admission of guilt fine shall have a criminal record registered against their name. And even if they give you a fine for $50 for not displaying a license disc or for parking your vehicle beyond your stay, you get a criminal record. That is the kind of smoke and mirrors that this bunch are actually...
It's all about smoke and mirrors. Tiani, I hear your point. We're going to be crossing to you in a moment, but it is time to say goodbye to AKC Plus viewers. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition. Don't worry though, switch over to ETV. We can continue this conversation, which extends until 8:30 a.m. this morning. What we're going to do now is take a quick ad break, but don't go anywhere. We'll see you shortly.